Pernambuco is a state of Brazil, located in the northeast region of the country. The state of Pernambuco also includes the archipelago Fernando de Noronha, with an estimated population of 9.2 million people in 2013. It is the seventh most populous state of Brazil, and is the sixth most densely populated and the 19th most extensive among the states and territories of the country. Its capital and largest city, Recife, is the ninth most populous Brazilian city, being one of the most important economic and urban hubs in the country. As of 2013 estimates, Recife's metropolitan area is the fourth most populous in the country, and the largest urban agglomeration in the northeast Brazil. In 1982, the city of Olinda, the second oldest city in Brazil, was declared a World Heritage Site by UNESCO. Recife, the state capital, and Olinda have one of the most traditional Brazilian carnivals. Both have architecture of Portugal, with centuries-old caçaros and churches, kilometers of beaches and much culture. The proximity of the equator guarantees sunshine throughout the year, with average temperatures of 26 degrees Celsius. Physical geography. Pernambuco comprises a comparatively narrow coastal zone, a high inland plateau, and an intermediate zone formed by the terraces and slopes between the two. Its surface is much broken by the remains of the ancient plateau, which has been worn down by erosion, leaving escarpments and ranges of flat-topped mountains, called chapadas, capped in places by horizontal layers of sandstone. Ranges of these chapadas form the boundary lines with three states: the Serra do Maus and Serra Vermelha with Piauí, the Serra do Araripe with Ceará, and the Serra dos Carrarisvelos with Paraíba. The coastal area is fertile, and was formerly covered by the humid Pernambuco coastal forests, the northern extension of the Atlantic forests of eastern Brazil. It is now placed to extensive sugarcane plantations. It has a hot, humid climate, relieved to some extent by the southeast trade winds. The middle zone, called the Agreste region, has a drier climate and lighter vegetation, including the semi-deciduous Pernambuco interior forests, where many trees lose their leaves in the dry season. The inland region, called the Sertão, is high, stony, and dry, and frequently devastated by prolonged droughts. The climate is characterized by hot days and cool nights. There are two clearly defined seasons, a rainy season from March to June, and a dry season for the remaining months. The interior of the state is covered mostly by the dry thorny scrub vegetation called caatinga. The Rio São Francisco is the main water source for this area. The climate is more mild in the countryside of the state because of the Borborema Plateau. Some towns are located more than 1,000 meters above sea level, and temperatures there can descend to 10 degrees Celsius and even 5 degrees Celsius in some cities during the winter. The island of Fernando de Noronha in the Atlantic Ocean, 535 kilometers northeast of Recife, has been part of Pernambuco since 1988. The rivers of the state include a number of small plateau streams flowing southward to the São Francisco River, and several large streams in the eastern part flowing eastward to the Atlantic. The former are the Mossoto, Ima, Paju, Terra Nova, Bridgia, Boa Vista and Ponte, and are dry channels the greater part of the year. The largest of the coastal rivers are the Goiânia River, which is formed by the confluence of the Tracunhaí and Capibaribe, and drains a rich agricultural region in the northeast part of the state, the Capibaribe, which has its source in the Serra de Jacarara and flows eastward to the Atlantic at Recife with a course of nearly 300 miles, the Ipojuca, which rises in the Serra de Heraldia Velha and reaches the coast south of Recife, the Sirinan, and the Iuna. A large tributary of the Iuna, the Rio Jacuípe, forms part of the boundary line with Alagoas. History. Originally inhabited by numerous tribes of Tupi-Guarani-speaking indigenous peoples, Pernambuco was first settled by the Portuguese in the 16th century. The French under Bertrand d'Ormesson tried to establish a French trading post at Pernambuco in 1531. Shortly after, King John III of Portugal created the hereditary captaincies in 1534. Pernambuco was granted to Duarte Coelho, who arrived in Nova Lusitania in 1535. Duarte directed military actions against the French allied Cayetes Indians, and upon their defeat in 1537 established a settlement at the site of a former Maran Indian village, henceforth known as Olinda, as well as another village at Igaraçu. Due to the cultivation of sugar and cotton, Pernambuco was one of the few prosperous captaincies. With the support of the Dutch West India Company, sugar mills were built and a sugar-based economy developed. In 1612, Pernambuco produced 14,000 tons of sugar. In the 1640s, more than 24,000 tons of sugar were exported to Amsterdam alone. While the sugar industry relied at first on the labor of indigenous peoples, especially the Tupas and Tapu-Yash, high mortality and economic growth led to the importation of enslaved Africans from the late 17th century. Some of these slaves escaped the sugar-producing coastal regions and formed independent inland communities called Mocambos, including Palmares. In 1630, Pernambuco, as well as many Portuguese possessions in Brazil, was occupied by the Dutch. The occupation was strongly resisted and the Dutch conquest was only partially successful. In the interim, thousands of the enslaved Africans had fled to Palmares, and soon the Mocambos there had grown into two significant states. The Dutch Republic, who allowed sugar production to remain in Portuguese hands, regarded suppression of Palmares important, but they were unsuccessful. Johan Maurits van Nassau-Siegen, Count of Nassau, was appointed as ruler of the Nieuw Holland. Nassau's government built Victoria or the Victorian Delta Islands, which have similarities to Salvador's topography. This moved the political focus from Olinda to Recife. Nassau's Dutch administration was noted for advancements in urbanism, culture, and science. The Dutch legacy is still recognizable in Pernambuco's people, accent and architecture. The Portuguese reconquered Recife in 1654 and Olinda regained its status of political center. However, Recife remained the commercial port city. If the Dutch were gone, however, the threat of the now unified Quilombo of Palmares remained. In spite of a treaty negotiated in 1678 with its ruler Ganga Zumba, a war between the two remained. Zumbi, who became ruler following the peace treaty and later repudiated it, fought the Portuguese government until 1694, when soldiers brought from the south eventually defeated him. In 1710 the Muscat War took place in Pernambuco. This conflict set the Muscats from Recife against the establishment hosted in Olinda and led by the Senhores de Engenho. Pernambuco was the site of the most important rebellions and insurrections in Brazilian history, especially in the 19th century. 1817 was the year of the Pernambucan Revolution, a republican separatist movement which resulted in the creation of the Republic of Pernambuco. The main cause of the revolution was dissatisfaction with the colonial administration. The Republic was declared on 7 March 1817. After military intervention, the secession ended on 20 May 1817. The Republic's flag is the current flag of Pernambuco. As a reaction to the Emperor Dom Pedro I's dissolution of the Constituent Assembly, the Confederation of the Equator was set up on 2 July 1824. The Confederation was another separatist movement which encompassed the provinces of Pernambuco, Paraíba, Rio Grande do Norte, and Ceará. On 29 November 1824, the Confederation's forces capitulated to the Imperial Army. Pernambuco was the site of the brief Liberal Republican Praia revolt in 1848, which was Brazil's response to the European year of failed liberal revolutions. Diodoro da Fonseca, the marshal who crushed the revolt, much later overthrew Emperor Pedro II, and served as the first president of the Brazilian Republic. Dutch occupation in the 17th century, the Netherlands was experiencing a surge of freedom and progress, free from the anchors of delay that lingered in other parts of America. Its society, its economy and the arts experienced the benefits of modern capitalism, driven by the ambition of a powerful bourgeoisie. A symbolic expression of this new economy was a branch of the Dutch West India Company, that would be called a transnational corporation today, which had influence throughout the world and controlled much of the trade between East and West. A board of 19 members appointed Prince Johan Maurits, Count of Nassau, governor of Pernambuco. It was an auspicious choice for Northeast, because he was a lover of the arts, a versatile and competent talent, with a deep interest in the New World. In 1637 he opened his government guidelines quite different from those of the Portuguese colonists, declaring freedom of religion and trade. His entourage contained traders, artists, planners, German and Dutch citizens. He was accompanied by 6 painters, including John Post and Albert Eckhout. Nassau also created an environment of Dutch religious tolerance, new to Portuguese America and irritating to his Calvinist associates. Nassau was the first to replace sugar production monoculture with an economic polyculture. Jewish immigration under Dutch rule. Jewish culture developed in Recife. Many Ocean Jews had sought refuge in the Netherlands. The Jewish community, especially the Sephardim, were established and would spread to the northern Americas. There are records that in 1636 a synagogue was being built in the city. Many Dutch Jews were linked to commercial activities of the East Islands Company, which naturally sent him to the New World. A Jewish scholar from Amsterdam, Isaac Abuab da Fonseca, arrived in Recife in 1642, becoming the first rabbi on Brazilian soil and on the continent. In 1643, 3 years after the Portuguese regained the crown in the metropolis, Father Antonio Vieira, frowned upon, persecuted by the Inquisition and admirer of Abuab, recommended the King of Portugal occupy the capital of the new Christian and Jewish immigrants. To help the depressed Portuguese finances in 1630, Indian West Islands Company once again turned its interests to the captaincies of the Dutch colony in the Americas. Due to the Iberian Union, the Dutch Republic saw in Pernambuco the opportunity to strike Spain and to compensate for the loss due to the failure of Dutch management. In the 26th of December 1629, a squad with 66 vessels and 7,280 men left São Vicente, Cape Verde, heading to Pernambuco. Nowadays, it is credited that the majority of the inhabitants of the Pernambuco's Agresta has some Dutch ancestry. Demographics. According to the IBGE of 2009, there were 8,745,000 people residing in the state. The population density was 89.6 inhabitants per square kilometer. Urbanization. 77%. Population growth. 1.2%. Houses. 2,348,000. The last PNAD census revealed the following numbers: 4,799,000 brown people, 3,307,000 white people, 561,000 black people, 41,000 Amerindian people, 31,000 Asian people. Mixed race are more common in the coast. Mamelucos are more common in the interior. Whites of colonial Portuguese descent are present as well. According to a genetics study from 2013, Brazilians in Pernambuco have 56.8% European, 27.9% African and 15.3% Amerindian ancestries, respectively. Economy. The service sector is the largest component of GDP at 73.2%, followed by the industrial sector at 21.6%. Agribusiness represents 5.2% of GDP. Pernambuco exports. sugar 35.6%, fruit and juice 12.6%, fish and crustacean 12.3%, electric products 11.1%, chemicals 7.1%, woven 5.6%. Economic sectorial composition in 2006 according with IBGE. In 2007 Pernambuco has 2.34% share of the Brazilian economy and 17.9% share of the Northeast region economy. It's the 10th largest economy of the whole country. The GDP for the state was 104,394,000,000 reais, and the per capita income was 11,776 reais. The economy is based on agriculture, livestock farming and creations, as well as industry. In the period of October 2005 to October 2006, the industrial growth of the state was the second biggest in Brazil, 6.3%. More than double the national average in the same period. Another segment that deserves to be highlighted is mineral extraction. The Pole Gesseiro of Ararapina is the supplier from 95% of the plaster consumed in Brazil. The pole of data processing of the Recife digital port, despite having started in 2000, is one of the 5 biggest in Brazil. It employs around 3,000 persons, and has 3.5% the GDP of the state. Livestock according with IBGE 2007, Pernambuco has the second largest livestock portfolio in the Northeast region and the 8th of Brazil. Livestock table 2007 Agriculture S, seasonal, P, permanent agriculture, plus thousands units ethanol. Pernambuco state has the 5th highest sugarcane. Brazilian production. Brazil is the second largest producer of alcohol fuel in the world, typically fermenting ethanol from sugarcane and sugar beets. The country produces a total of 18 billion liters annually, of which 3.5 billion are exported, 2 billion of them to the U.S. Alcohol-fueled cars started in the Brazilian market in 1978 and became quite popular because of heavy subsidy. But in the 80s prices rose and gasoline regained the leading market share. But from 2004 on, alcohol rapidly increased its market share once again because of new technologies involving hybrid fuel car engines called flex by all major car manufacturers. Flex engines work with gasoline, alcohol or any mixture of both fuels. As of February 2007, approximately 80% of new vehicles sold in Brazil are hybrid fuel-powered. Because of the Brazilian lead in production and technology, many countries became very interested in importing alcohol fuel and adopting the flex vehicle concept. On 7 March 2007, U.S. President George W. Bush visited the city of São Paulo to sign agreements with Brazilian President Lula on importing alcohol and its technology as an alternative fuel. Education. Portuguese is the official national language, and thus the primary language taught in schools. But English and Spanish are part of the official high school curriculum. Educational institutions. The main educational installations of the state are concentrated in the capital, including the 7th best federal university of the country. Pernambuco had main universities and colleges founded in the 19th and 20th century. Some of them are known nationally. The Faculdade de Direito do Recife, or Recife's Law College, was founded in August 11, 1827, was the first higher education institute in Brazil. Castro Alves and Joaquim Nabuo, 2 important people in Brazilian history, studied there. Others important institutions are Universidade Federal do Pernambuco, Universidade Católica de Pernambuco, Universidade de Pernambuco, Universidade Federal Rural do Pernambuco, Instituto Federal de Educação, Ciência e Tecnologia de Pernambuco, and many others. Festivals. Carnival. The 4-day period before Lent leading up to Ash Wednesday is carnival time in Brazil. Rich and poor alike forget their cares as they party in the streets. Pernambuco has large carnival celebrations, including the frevo, typical Pernambuco music. Another famous carnival music style from Pernambuco is maracatu. The cities of Recife and Olinda hold the most authentic and democratic carnival celebrations in Brazil. The largest carnival parade in all of Brazil is Galo da Madrugada, which takes place in downtown Recife on the Saturday of Carnival. Another famous event is the Noite dos Tambores Silenciosos. Recife's joyous carnival is nationally known, attracting thousands of people every year. The party starts a week before the official date, with electric trios shaking the Boa Viagem district. On Friday, people take to the streets to enjoy themselves to the sound of frevo and to dance with maracatu, saranda, caboclo hafoxe, reggae and manguebeat groups. There are still many other entertainment centers around the city, featuring local and national artists. One of the highlights is Saturday, when more than 1 million people follow the Galo da Madrugada group. From Sunday to Monday, there is the Night of the Silent Drums, on the Patio de Turco, where maracaters honor slaves that died in prisons. St. John's Day Festa Junina was introduced to northeastern Brazil by the Portuguese, for whom St. John's Day, on the 24th of June, is one of the oldest and most popular celebrations of the year. Differently, of course, from what happens on the European Midsummer Day, the festivities in Brazil do not take place during the summer solstice, but during the tropical winter solstice. The festivities traditionally begin after the 12th of June, on the eve of St. Anthony's Day, and last until the 29th, which is St. Peter's Day. During these 15 days, there are bonfires, fireworks, and folk dancing in the streets. Once exclusively a rural festival, today, in Brazil, it is largely a city festival during which people joyfully and theatrically mimic peasant stereotypes and clichés in a spirit of jokes and good times. Typical refreshments and dishes are served, including canjica and pamonha. It should be noted that, like during Carnival, these festivities involve costume wearing, dancing, heavy drinking, and visual spectacles. Like what happens on Midsummer and St. John's Day in Europe, bonfires are a central part of these festivities in Brazil. St. John's Day is celebrated throughout Pernambuco. Nonetheless, the festivities in Caruaru are by far the largest in the state. St. John's festivals in Gravatá and Carpina are also very popular. Winter festival in the hilly areas of the interior, mainly in areas with a microclimate of altitude, temperatures that can reach 8 degrees Celsius in the winter. Every winter, when the weather is milder, tourists from neighboring states and other parts of Pernambuco visit cities such as Garanhuns, Gravatá, Triunfo de Quaratinga do Norte and Brejo da Madeiras. The city of Garanhuns holds an annual winter festival in the month of July. The main attractions are concerts, dances, rural tourism, culinary and the relatively low temperatures for a tropical climate.